One question that I get asked quite a lot is the question of what do I do to attract renters to my Turo fleet? How do I find my customers and how do I advertise for my business? And the answer is, to be honest, nothing. You see, that is part of the entire point of having Turo and hosting your cars on the Turo platform, is that Turo is supposed to be the one to provide you with those customers. And I have definitely leaned into that. And I have allowed for Turo to find nearly 100% of all of the people that rent my cars. But despite the fact that Turo does find me all of my customers, I do believe that there are some things that you should do to try to get as many rentals as possible. And I think that there are some things that you should avoid doing if you're somebody that is finding yourself with nobody renting your cars. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down a few of the reasons as to why you may be getting no Turo rentals, or alternatively, why you aren't getting enough Turo rentals. By the end of this video, you should have a pretty good idea of what attracts renters to your page, how to increase your rentals, and how to make more money on the Turo platform. So let's get started. Now, whenever it comes to Turo, the way in which we gauge how often your cars are rented is by a rate called a utilization rate. So for example, if you have 10 days that you're looking at and your car was rented for 7 out of those 10 days, then your utilization rate was 70%. Basically, whenever it comes to Turo, you want to have the highest utilization rate as possible. That means your cars are getting rented out more often. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to utilization rate, there really isn't any sort of public data that we can look at to try to figure out what an average or what a good utilization rate is, because it depends on a lot of different factors, including where you're located, including what type of car you have, including what time of year it is. The utilization rate is going to be very different depending on a number of different things. For example, my Maserati Ghibli has a lower utilization rate than my Toyota Yaris because my Toyota Yaris is used for commuting, going to work, going from point A to point B, and my Maserati is not. And as a result, because the Maserati is a luxury vehicle, it has a lower utilization. Now, despite the fact that I've never done any sort of advertising, I've never done anything to promote my Turo fleet, my cars have a really high utilization rate. In fact, my cars very rarely, if ever, are sitting for more than 1 day at a time, unless we manually have gone in and blocked off the calendar for routine maintenance. And so because of this, I've oftentimes gotten the question, well, what do you do to advertise? And like I mentioned in the intro, I really just allow Turo to advertise for me. But despite the fact that Turo does do all of my advertising and I've never done anything physically myself, I do think that there are some common mistakes that Turo hosts oftentimes make, and these mistakes can lead to you not having your cars rented out. Now, before we dive into what these mistakes are and why you may or may not be getting the rentals that you've expected, if you guys could do me a huge favor and if you could hit the like button and hit the notification bell for the YouTube algorithm, I would greatly appreciate it. This helps my channel grow because it helps let YouTube know that you guys are enjoying my content, and thus they push my content out to a new audience. So if you guys could do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, the first mistake that you'll oftentimes see on Turo is the mistake of people simply pricing their vehicles too high. If you price your vehicles too high, especially in comparison to similar vehicles in the area, you are almost guaranteeing yourself to never get any bookings. Now, I understand you want to make as much money as possible, and because of that, you want to be very aggressive with your pricing. But at the end of the day, you have to still be competitive, and you have to make sure to price your vehicles in at least the same range of similar make, model, and years. Now, I personally am a believer in pricing your vehicles on the low end of the spectrum. I think that this does a few different things. Number one is it incentivizes people to book your cars, and the more people that book your cars, the more that your car will be listed in Turo search results. It kind of creates a positive domino effect that allows for more people to see your cars, and thus more people to rent your cars, and thus you make more money. Additionally, is I price my cars pretty low, at least in comparison to other vehicles, but I don't offer any discounts, I don't offer delivery, I don't budge on any of my policies. This means that, yeah, I may not be making as much money as some other hosts with my daily trip price, but the passivity of my business model kind of makes up for it because each one of my cars is a relatively low time commitment. Now, I'm not telling you to undersell your car drastically, that definitely isn't a good idea, but what I would advise you to do is if everybody else is pricing their cars at $30 per day and you have a very similar vehicle, maybe look at pricing your car at $28 a day or $29 a day. Even a $1 or $2 difference can make a pretty big difference to the customer. But all in all, I think that price is one of the biggest issues that I oftentimes see with Turo hosts who aren't seeing the bookings that they're expecting. A too high of price will almost always guarantee that a renter will choose somebody else over you. Number 2 is your calendar, and this is something that I've touched on this channel before. Now, the Turo app has a calendar that allows for you to block off days. It also allows for you to customize the vehicle's availability. And if you're somebody that has a really tight calendar, then that is also a really good way to guarantee that you won't get any rentals. I would highly encourage you to keep your calendar as open as possible. Now, I know that this isn't always a viable option for people who are renting the cars that they own and also drive, because there are some days where you need a car, you have to drive it, and thus you have to block it off in the Turo app. And if this type of thing applies to you, then I totally get it, and there are some circumstances where you simply have to block off the calendar. But please know that if you do this, you are probably going to hinder your own rentals. You really do have to keep your calendar open, because that is the best way to ensure that you get as many booking requests as possible. I've noticed that a lot of people get frustrated whenever their car doesn't get rented out, but then whenever I ask them the question of, well, what is your availability? They say something along the lines of, well, I can only rent out my car on Saturday or Sunday, or, well, I'm only available after 5 p.m. And I get that everybody has hectic lives, everybody has hectic schedules, but if your schedule is extremely tight and extremely not flexible, then you're going to have a hard time being successful with Turo because of the fact that your schedule is just simply unaccommodating. On a very similar note are things like your advance notice settings, how long of trips you allow for guests to take. Do you have a minimum trip length? Do you have a maximum trip length? These are also things that will drastically impact how much money you make on Turo, because it will limit the amount of people that want to rent your car. I always encourage you to keep your listing and the settings within your listing as flexible as possible, because the more flexibility means that people will have the opportunity to rent your car. The fact is, Turo is still a relatively new concept, and I think a lot of people are still very confused with how it works. I can't tell you how many people rent my cars on a month-by-month basis that tell me that they've never heard of Turo before and this is their first time using it. With these types of renters that are brand new to the Turo platform, flexibility will go a really long way. Having no minimum trip length, having no maximum trip length, having instant booking and no advance notice set to your vehicles, these are all things that will really help yourself open your listings to as many renters as possible. And if you do this, I can almost guarantee that you'll see more renters. Now, listing settings like your price, like your advance notice, like your flexibility, these are all things that will have a huge impact on your utilization rate, but they aren't the only things that matter. You see, the type of renters that you accept will also have a huge impact on your profile as well. I notice on different Facebook pages, on different groups that I'm a part of, that new hosts will examine and investigate every single renter that rents their car, and they will look up their background information, they'll look them up on Facebook, they will see if they are a smart and responsible renter, and then they will make the decision to rent to them based off of what they find. And I personally think that this strategy of doing a private investigation on each one of your renters is simply a huge mistake. And there are a few reasons why I feel this way. Number one is this is a business, and if you are wanting to go into a full-fledged investigation on every single one of your customers, you simply are never going to make it. You have to detach yourselves from the vehicle, and you have to accept that damage will happen. It's not a matter of if, it is simply a matter of when. And if you are jumping through this many hurdles to prevent an inconvenience or damage to your car, you simply will not make it on the Turo platform. Number two is the fact that there are only so many renters in the United States. There are only so many renters in your city. And if you are digging in on each and every one, nitpicking their behavior, nitpicking their social presence, nitpicking what they look like, you are eventually going to alienate a huge portion of your potential renters. Turo, to an extent, is sort of a numbers game. Your car is going to go out on a lot of trips, and a portion of those renters will do everything exactly how it's supposed to be done. But another portion of those renters won't, and that's just the reality of the situation. For example, if I send my cars out on 300 trips, I know that a portion of those will be fine. I know that a portion of those, they'll probably smoke in the car or leave it dirty or not filled up with gas. And then I know a portion of them will also wreck or even total my cars in some cases. The fact is, whenever you're dealing with people, especially a lot of people, things are not always going to go as planned. And if you're trying to prevent every single accident, every single inconvenience by investigating each and every one of your renters and then approving them or disproving them based off of what you find, you are, number one, causing yourself way too much headache. You're, number two, thinking far too much into this. And number three, you are alienating a huge portion of your customers. Now, I know that this all seems far too simple and it feels like I'm oversimplifying the process, but to be honest, this really is all there is to it. Over the summer, I had the experience of connecting with somebody at Turo HQ, and I spoke with them about the Turo algorithm. And I basically was able to pick their brain about what is taken into account whenever the Turo algorithm is pushing certain vehicles. And all of these things that I've spoken about in this video are important factors with the Turo algorithm. Your price, your listing, your flexibility, your schedule, whether or not you offer delivery, where your location is, these are all things that really do matter. And if you keep an eye on these settings and if you adjust them accordingly, you should see an almost instant boost in Turo rentals. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in learning a bit more about Turo and car sharing, I do have a car sharing masterclass. You can check that out down in the description below. If you use the code BOOST, you can get $25 off of that. So if you're interested in checking that out, please do so. And like always, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.